President Bostic, fellow Rotarian, thank you for being with us here today, and I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Ken, and it's very good to see you. You got my whole title down without any problems. You're like the second person in my 3 years to do that, so it's really quite impressive. Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. It's really good to be here to be able to talk to you about something that I think is really important. I'm actually very excited because usually when I talk to you guys, it's just me on the screen. I get to share it now with Lieutenant Governor, so I'm really grateful for that. Take a little of the pressure off, but also give you some different perspectives on what's going on. Today, we're going to have a really important conversation, and one that I think has the potential to reshape the trajectory of Georgia and its future when it comes to innovation. Now, Ken noted earlier that this year, the Rotary's theme is really investing for the future. And this conversation around innovation falls squarely in that space. And that's why I thought this would be a particularly good venue for me to have a conversation with Lieutenant Governor Geoff Duncan to talk about his vision for innovation for Georgia. Now, you all know Lieutenant Governor Duncan quite well, I'm sure, professional baseball player, successful entrepreneur, and he was elected into his position in November of 2018. Now, when he retired from baseball, before he got into the political sphere, he and his wife started a small marketing firm. And the success that they had there spurred a series of entrepreneurial ventures, including spending time as the CEO of a health tech startup. Now, innovation is in his blood, and I think you'll hear the passion that he has for innovation as we go through this conversation today. And talk about our collective future. So first, I just want to thank you, Lieutenant Governor, for joining us.
Well, thank you so much, and just incredibly honored to share the screen. I would say the stage, but we'll say the screen with you and your accomplishments, and certainly great to be here with this great group of folks. This organization has got a history of having folks that are focused on innovation and focused on really being a part of the future of Atlanta and Georgia as a whole. So honored to be here.
Well, it's great to have you. And I have to say, I'm just thrilled to be here to really help you unveil a plan that was developed under your leadership to achieve inclusive innovation statewide. And those are three keywords: inclusive innovation statewide, through improved access and opportunities for all Georgians. And what I wanted to do is really unpack those first three keywords: the innovative and inclusive innovation statewide, and get your thoughts on that. So how do you define inclusive innovation, and why is it so important for us as we think about the future of Georgia?
Yeah, it's so neat to be here today to think about this. Technology capital of the East Coast notion came from the campaign trail and then into office with me to now be a reality where we're actually taking actionable steps forward. This phrase, inclusive innovation, is so powerful. It's got so many subtitles to it. And we could spend hours kind of unpacking it, but for me, innovation as a whole, it really is the removal of barriers, and inclusive is how we actually do that, and that means we include everybody. And so it climbs so many barriers. It climbs geography, it climbs socioeconomic, it climbs educational, it climbs partisanship, it climbs so many things, and really. One, we understand we can be more successful with an inclusive atmosphere. We've learned that as CEOs and entrepreneurs and just coworkers on big projects. But really to understand the message that we broadcast to the world, this inclusive innovation style is one that we want the world to be paying attention to, so that nobody thinks their idea or their company or even their capital wouldn't do well coming here to Georgia. And so the statewide mentality too is important because, for a long, long time, Atlanta has gained traction around becoming a technology hub. I think that was highlighted on one of the survey questions. But now to really think about this notion of Tifton and Savannah and Dalton and Valdosta and all of these new areas, Columbus, Augusta, there's so many different areas, and even in between those points, that can really join in this and really be a part of this 21st century growth strategy, not just for Atlanta or the suburbs, but for all of Georgia.
Well, thank you for that. And I have to say, I'll add Macon to that list.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
gonna
right. I
talk
almost feel
about that.
bad. It's like giving a speech and recognizing the elected officials in the crowd, right? You're going to leave some out, but there's so many great opportunities, and it's really was this energy that started to gain, Raphael, as we started to kick this off, this task force, to watch these stories come in that we didn't even know about, where there was already sparks, there was already investment being made, there was already ideas that were flowing through. It was so neat to watch kind of the floodgates open, and it really inspired me, and I know it inspired you and others that were on our initial task force.
Well, I have to say that was exactly my experience. I had the privilege to serve on this task force as a chair of a co-chair of a subcommittee with Lynn Murphy from Macon. That's why I needed to get
That's right.
Macon in there. I get yelled at. And I have to say, I was really overwhelmed with the breadth and the depth of the talent and the ideas that came from people all over the state, and people I did not know and had not had experiences with, but I was inspired by. I learned a ton. I call some of them my friends now. It was really just a great experience. And the word you used that was really quite interesting was energy. And when I reflected on sort of talking about this with you, the energy was the part that I really wanted to raise, because you convened this committee in January of 2020. So just 7 months ago. And the committee issued its final recommendations in July, right? So if you do the math, that is a 6-month sprint. And as the folks here are going to see, the recommendations are insightful, they're deep, they're conceptual. So this committee, it worked super hard. It got a ton done. I feel incredibly privileged to have had the opportunity to serve on it. And I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to do that. But I could talk about this all day, but we got you here to do the talking. So why don't you give us a picture of what's ultimately come from the Georgia Innovates Task Force?
Yeah. So, this whole idea, and oh, by the way, the 6 months that you're talking about, there was a little bit of disruption in the marketplace
Just
with
a little
obviously
bit, right?
the pandemic that we continue to deal with. But I think it starts with the person that we all kind of chose to be our leader through this. And this was Dr. Bud Peterson. Mike Dudgeon, who's my policy director and a very successful technology entrepreneur, and I really started sitting around in Q4 of last year, really trying to decide how do we make this an actionable, notion of becoming the technology capital of the East Coast. And, almost instantly, it just made very, very good sense to try to reach out to Bud and ask Bud to kind of help us create this dream and make it a reality. And really, the whole point was to practice what we preach. It was to really include folks from all over the state. It was to include people with all different types of perspectives. It was to convene in a way that allowed us to be effective, that allowed us to be actionable. The last thing I wanted to do was to create a task force that, if anybody's been in and around politics, all too often a task force creates a great document that's good for a soundbite, but doesn't actually do something. As you see here on this slide, one task force, 12 members, 35 supporting organizations, 65 subcommittee members, which I want to make sure and pause on this point here, that this is going to be a part of our future. As we talk about, 133 research interviews, 210 Georgians working across the state, as we kind of unpack today what the next phase of this is, we want to make sure that folks understand we'll have a process in place for folks to be a part of this, to play a part of this, to really give us actionable items that we can, in quick order, really gain your confidence as to we know what we're talking about and we know how to ask tough questions. And so I'm proud of how we really pulled this together. And the feedback, Raphael, it's great to hear you say it. Obviously, we've had several conversations, but it's great to have folks, that were on the task force, your Marty Flanagan's, your Paul Bowers, I could go on with the whole list. I mean, just an incredible group that tell us, hey, this was fun to participate in because we built friendships, but we actually got important things done and we're able to make important progress. And so that's really going to be a part of us as we move forward. The one other part too, I wanted to
thank you.
I wanted to make mention to was the bold ideas. I think that was something I felt like if we create an atmosphere of entrepreneurship. So the only way to become the technology capital of the East Coast is to really create an atmosphere or an ecosystem. And that ecosystem has to be willing. If you've ever been a part of a startup, it's okay to wear blue jeans and t-shirts to walk in the room, but you still got to be required to ask tough questions and work long hours and kind of unpack things outside the box. And that was really the atmosphere that we created inside this task force, was to make sure that we did that. And that's important for us to, as I said, to start this out with, is to practice what we preach. Because it's very easy to see, are we very platonic? Are we very stationary? Or are we trying to continue to look for how can we be exponentially better? Not just better, but exponentially better. If you're a startup that's trying to become $1 billion unicorn, you can't just be uncomfortable. You just can't be comfortable being 10% better at the end of the quarter. You got to be exponentially better at the end of the quarter. And that's really what we saw come into play through our task force. And I think we've got something to show. I don't know if I'm kicking it off or if you are.
Yeah,
kind of the video. That's the play button. So I want to give us a really good snapshot, everybody here, to see kind of what we were able to accomplish in such a short period of time, in such a disruptive period of time.
Einstein said that the true sign of intelligence is not knowledge, but imagination. Here in Georgia, our imagination fuels our innovation. The seeds planted by those before us have grown into fields of green and into towering skyscrapers. We've always been dreamers, but now we're makers. We're learning to work smarter, go farther, grow faster, grow better. In every corner of this state, in every big city and small town, brilliant minds shine and invent and create. While we celebrate our rise to the top of the cutting edge, we know there is still more to be done. More dots to connect, more lights to shine, more resources to bring. When we empower our homegrown talent and attract new minds, we will truly drive our economic growth through innovation. We will not be known simply for our rankings. We will be known for our entrepreneurs, our startups that change the world, our technology that changes industry, our students that will change history, our grit to keep pushing for better. Here in Georgia, we are creating a generation of diverse dreamers and makers, and we stand behind them in support. Whether it's art or technology or science, the people here working on their dreams are fueled by passion. And that passion is what keeps Georgia growing. Does the world see us for what we are yet? There is a story behind each of these faces, each of these spaces, and we will tell them all. We are strong and getting stronger, smart and getting smarter, bold and getting bolder. William Blake said, "What is now proved was once only imagined." Imagine what we can become.
That is so exciting to watch. I just get goosebumps thinking about how much traction we have gained and how much, just camaraderie we've built across so many different geographical boundaries and other boundaries in industries that are just complete titans working together to share as we move forward. And it is such an honor for me to be able to stand here today and to be able to talk about the fruit that this task force has been able to bear. And we're proud to be able to offer up today a public-private partnership that we're entitling Partnership for Innovation, Inclusive Innovation, and we're nicknaming it PI Squared. Of course, in true entrepreneurial fashion, you got to have a cool name, right? You got to have something that's catchy. And our goal here is to just include the best and brightest from this public-private partnership in a way that's going to allow us to accelerate this notion of becoming the technology capital of the East Coast. Leadership is always important, and we certainly would continue to just be as blessed as any group out there to continue to call Dr. Bud Peterson, our chair of this effort, and director of the operation is going to be Deborah Lamb. And so excited to partner with Georgia Tech in this incredible opportunity to be able to pull together with this incredible list of names. You can see it here on the slide. I got to tell you, I was a little starstruck making the phone calls out to make the invitation to the folks on this list, to be able to ask them. I mean, just to be able to say, hey, I'd love for you to be a part of our team. I'd love for you to be able to lean into this. So I was starstruck on the front end, but then I felt like a really tough manager being able to just unpack to them the work that we expect out of this and the relationships that we expect to develop. And to a person on this group, we are very, very encouraged at their excitement to be on this, to be able to leverage their relationships, to be able to leverage their resume, to be able to leverage their entrepreneurial spirit, to be able to come together and accelerate this entire notion of being the technology capital of the East Coast. And Raphael, I want to make sure that I leave this in a good spot too, for those that are listening and those that will eventually listen to this in one way, shape, or form, whether it be through a news story or through a YouTube video replay. There is tons of opportunities for others that aren't on this list to be a big part of this as we move forward. And we'll set up a process out there for you to be able to join, whether it be formally or informally, but be able to work together to quite honestly be able to realize a dream as we continue to work forward over the next few years to absolutely make beyond a shadow of a doubt, Georgia is an incredible place to bring your startup, to start your startup, and to grow your existing business.
Well, I have to say, Lieutenant Governor, this is really an exciting thing. You might have noticed, my Rotarian friends, that my name is on that list.
Yes, that's right.
I was very privileged to have the Lieutenant Governor call me and ask me to be a part of PI Squared. I'm going to struggle with that, by the way. Like, I'm not an acronyms guy, just so, but I'll go with it for today. But the reason why I agreed to do this was because innovation is critical. When you think about how economies are evolving moving forward, how we innovate and that we continue to innovate is going to be a critical part of our maintaining our standard of living and our competitiveness in the global economy. And so, I couldn't think of very many things that were going to be as important as contributing and supporting this effort. I'm happy to do this. And so thank you, Lieutenant Governor, for inviting me to participate. I'm really excited about doing that. Now, if we go to the next slide, you'll see that there is actually a roadmap for moving forward. So the task force developed 14 recommendations and put them into 3 categories: foundational, transformational, and sustaining. And those 3 categories are going to guide the activities and the energy behind PI Squared. The foundational recommendations, there are 4 of those, and they're really designed to make sure that we have the building blocks that are required for innovation to take root. Things like education, connectivity, and access to data. The transformational recommendations are really designed to help Georgia start to change how we innovate. You heard the Lieutenant Governor talk about the Georgia way of innovation. There's going to be a lot of that comes out of these transformational. And then there are a couple of sustaining priorities as well. And these are really designed, one thing that the Lieutenant Governor said I think is really important. This has to live on beyond any of us who are participating at the very beginning. And the sustaining recommendations are designed to create those networks, the leadership that you guys called out is very important for us being successful, as well as establishing some pipelines for resources. So before we get into it, I think we're going to talk a little bit about some of the recommendations under all of those. But Lieutenant Governor, if you could say a little bit about why you thought that this is the right time for Georgia to be doing this, and why you think we're positioned for success.
Yeah, I think, the actionable items that came out of the task force were these pilot programs, and it's just to see the in-depth, but it's very easy to touch the problem you're trying to solve with these pilot programs, and being able to go right to the source of the challenge that we face, the barrier to innovation, and be able to look for opportunities to remove those. I think the time's right because, one, we have a history of innovation here in Georgia. We have very successful industries around fintech and cyber, just to name a bunch, aerospace, all of those things. But those are just a microcosm of where we could go. So I think we validated that there's also a strong relationship between education and higher ed. We've seen that in fintech and aerospace as we produce engineers, as we produce FinTech Academy. And so I think we've put on display a small portion of what we can truly become, but we've got to make sure we take care of other areas of opportunities. And I think it's important too, and this was such an important trait of the task force, is that we're adjustable, right? We don't kind of lock and load to a one specific lane and we stay there and we don't adjust. The important part of the public-private partnership is that we're constantly listening to feedback. We're constantly looking for opportunities to improve or to make a slight course adjustment to better pick up the needs of a specific industry, whether it be ramping up how we better dovetail the talent that needs to be there, how we maybe remove a barrier to being more invitive to investment, whatever the challenge is, rural broadband in areas around the state. And so making sure that we have this aura of being willing to adjust along the way is an important part of this private part of the relationship that we've got.
So you mentioned a couple of things. You've been hinting at some of these pilots and these efforts. I'd love to dive a little more into them, starting with the foundational. And I have to say, for me, the things that have happened with COVID, with some of the racial justice issues, have really brought to the fore the idea that we need to make sure that as we build this new innovative infrastructure, that we do it in a way that is fully inclusive and that incorporates everyone. Can you talk about this a little bit in terms of how you're thinking about these foundational investments?
Yeah, I'm gonna go through the notes here a little bit because I don't want to miss some of the really, really important stuff. I mean, I think it's the advancement of the efforts, will include a series of high impact, low cost pilot programs that we work through there. And we'll also make sure that we continue to reach in rural and metro and suburban. And so I think it's really that main set that we pull in there. Raphael, unpack the last part of that question. My earpiece went bad on the last part of that question.
Oh, no worries at all. Just was wondering about how sort of the COVID issue and then overlaid with racial justice has incorporated has been incorporated into the thinking around what PI squared is going to do for the next year or two.
Yeah, so it accelerated and validated the need for inclusiveness, right? So, I think that's an important part of this. One, from a technology standpoint, you think about our first real actionable meeting was a virtual meeting. So we have the at the Capitol announcement. And then we progress. I give a ton of credit to the task force members to no pushback. We continue to work for that. Dr. Peterson really accelerated that. But instantly we realized the validation of K through 12 and even higher ed in trying to deliver this virtual online model as we move forward. Instantly validated it. It was very neat to listen to a conversation that happened between Dr. Peterson and Dr. Cabrera at Georgia Tech about how quickly Georgia Tech was able to spool up and go online. They both were bantering back and forth quietly, just colleagues. They both at some point had the same job. And so they were talking about how long it would take and how much money and how many task force they would have created to spin up an online virtual education model at Georgia Tech. And the reality was it took almost no money, and they did it in 8 days because of a pandemic. Certainly many business models around that have figured out. But we also found the holes in that not everywhere in Georgia has the broadband connectivity that they need to. Also looking for opportunities to give to give those same economic opportunities in the jobs and the geography that they're in. And so really looking for ways, and also across industries. There were industries that I never in a million years thought could operate in a virtual environment or operate with innovation around, the restaurant industry is a prime example, looking for ways to empower small business entrepreneurs with ways to deliver their services. Agriculture, same thing, looking for ways to really spool up in an ag environment. Healthcare, I mean, my gosh, Raphael, I mean, it's amazing to think about how we're delivering healthcare, probably in a permanent format as we move forward. It empowered, it accelerated, it validated the need for the pilot programs that ultimately were a part of what our final recommendations were out of the task force. But then it gives us the opportunity to action and separate ourselves from our, I'm going to laugh here for a minute, from our competition, the other 49 states, to be able to position ourselves in a way that, because ultimately that first survey that I saw pop up that talked about, Boston kind of being slightly ahead of us, and look, these are New York and Miami and Charlotte and DC. These are real behemoths that investment has flown into for generations, and ideas have shown up. We're competing against the best and the brightest around the world. And so I think we have an opportunity to unpack some really, really sophisticated areas as we move forward. And I think that's really the COVID, the social unrest has allowed us to validate and accelerate the need to be successful at doing this.
Well, I totally agree with you. And, you in your response there, you talked about a lot of industries. For those of you who look through the pilots, you'll see there are a number of them in agriculture. I'm going to skip ahead, though, because I do want to talk about the second piece that you mentioned, which is how does Atlanta start to muscle in and get its own space in terms of attracting resources, venture capital, talent, and the like? Like, what kind of programs are in the recommendations that might support that kind of activity?
Yeah, well, one, people invest in the future, right? So as we try to appeal to to the investor world out there, they invest in the future, and so they got to feel good about the future here in Georgia. And so some of these unique opportunities that we have here through these pilot programs that I'd like to highlight is one, I really enjoyed the recommendations as they came out about agriculture as a whole. It was so neat to see the opportunities. I grew up kind of always in the suburbs throughout my life. And so I was around technology went to high school in Alpharetta. So I kind of watched Alpharetta develop and become the little tech hub it has become today. And so to watch, even on the campaign trail, as I watched how important agriculture, obviously as a lieutenant governor, I'm firmly aware of how important ag is to our current economic environment, but also to our future, even to as an export. And to watch team members come in and participate on the task force, and then as we unpacked, to watch the importance of this. So food system innovation advancement. Our current food system is not structured to address complex challenges of our supply chain and the inefficiencies and a market demand shortfalls. So resulting in wasted food and malnourished population segments. This is complicated stuff to solve. This is stuff that the entire world is leaning into. We have an opportunity to execute on this. We have an opportunity to really, truly create a lifetime opportunity that isn't just something that we're going to be a consumer of of the talent and the recommendations and the success of this program. We're going to be able to export this to not only the rest of the country, but to the rest of the world. I thought that was incredibly strong. And then bolstering, obviously, ag and combining innovation across the supply chain and really looking for opportunities to manage that in a sophisticated, complicated way, but in a way that we can truly build and create an atmosphere of innovation for ag and all types of supporting industries around that to come in and to be able to feel comfortable investing here in Georgia, to be able to be comfortable that we're paying very close attention. And this is a place to be able to go out and attract, whether it be your seed round or your A round, or even follow up with a growth round of B capital. And also to make sure that kids and students, I say students, I'm actually, funny enough as it is, Raphael, I'm in Athens, Georgia right now, and I'm here filming this because I'm moving in my son into his freshman year in college here at the University of Georgia. And as the crow would fly, I can see Russell Dorm, which at 1 o'clock, I'm going to be wearing shorts and t-shirts, moving him into that dorm. Through this window, I can see it. But I want my son, I want the students on this campus, especially in the agricultural side, to feel comfortable growing their career, investing here, leaving this environment and wanting to be able to walk into a job that is high-paying quality jobs to be able to either work for or innovate in this environment around agriculture. And so it is absolutely, it's so exciting to think that the ag part of this development is not something that's being left behind. It's part of that inclusive atmosphere And certainly there's opportunities, whether it be on hardware, tractor development, food plotting, there's notion around precision ag. And so much of that I've learned along the way that we can develop and become more efficient. And so long-winded answer there. I'm really fired up about it because it's not exactly the lane. It's not healthcare. It's not education. It's ag. And it's something I think is one of the best opportunities we have in front of us. It's unplowed territory. How does that sound?
How long did it take for you to come up with that one?
10 seconds, Raphael. I'm in politics, man. I got to be quick.
You got skills. That's really good.
I got skills.
Now, I got to tell you, the ag stuff is super exciting. And for those of you who are watching, it has a direct connection to our Rotary Club. R.K. Siegel's daughter has been very active in this space and came up with some really good ideas. So, Kashi, thank you for your help there. We're running a little short on time, so I want to actually jump way ahead. I'll just say, for those of you who are going to watch or read the recommendations, you'll see that there are ideas about how we get more venture capital to come to Georgia, how we support innovation in particular sectors, and there's a lot going on already. So at Georgia Tech and Savannah and Valdosta, and Macon, yes. Oh, so thank you. You got me that time. But I wanted to just say that all of this is super inspiring. But I wanted to just leave one last question for you on the sustaining recommendations, because one of the most important things here is that the things that we do today have got to be alive 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and 15 years from now. So what kind of recommendations are there out there to address that kind of issue?
So we've got to build an ecosystem, right? I think there's no way that you can create a lasting legacy, a lasting kind of self-fulfilling opportunity here unless you create an ecosystem. And that ecosystem is multifaceted. It's got to be an ecosystem of talent. Pre-COVID, when I sat down with CEOs and talked about them, their biggest concern was, I'm not certain there's enough talent flow to grow my business, with the expectations of my investors. And so we need to make sure that we have this continuous stream of talent that shows up here. And so we've got to make sure that we're creating leadership that allows us, and we certainly are making incredibly good strides. We're certainly partnering with academia, with higher ed, and with K through 12 to make sure that we're creating that, but also an ecosystem that's comfortable investing in the future here. And so we've got a couple of lasting. One is equity and leadership and funding policies. I think we've got to make sure that we continue to make sure nobody feels excluded from their opportunities here. And that's obviously the inclusive portion of what we're trying to do. But we also have got to make sure that no kid, no student, no early investor, no early entrepreneur feels like they don't have an opportunity to come here. And so we got to make sure this is a great place to run your business. And so I think that's an opportunity to continue to make course adjustments. One of the things we don't talk often enough about is that, Georgia is a great place to run your business, and we continue to see the accolades of that. It's a great place to raise your family. And I think as we continue to make sure that we have equity and leadership and funding policies, also advocating for achieving and sustaining leadership and access to early stage capital. That's that opportunity where I don't want any single entrepreneur or group of leaders, or maybe even early seed investors, to wake up one day and feel like there's no ability for follow-through investments into those businesses. And so I want to make sure that they have that level of comfort when they're that 5-person startup and they're operating on a shoestring budget, and they had access to seed capital, that they're not taking a lot of phone calls from, just to pick on, Austin or Silicon Valley or Boston or New York or Miami or somewhere else that's out there with bigger checks. We want to make sure they feel comfortable raising those dollars here. And so we're going to continue to be as champion as we possibly can. Because one of the things I'll tell you, it's from privately, as being in the investor space and being in the startup world, it is a tight-knit community. And your enemy is not really your enemy in this startup world. You're there to share ideas. You're there to continue to make sure that you cultivate a system that is very, very strong, that is very, very wants to continue to grow. And this notion of a mesh network, we want to innovate in this mesh network where there's shared ideas, there's shared continuity. Programmers are programmers, and so we want to make sure that and hardware folks are hardware folks, and investors are investor folks. And so we create this mesh network that is really, really just firmly kind of entrenched for generations, so that my kids and your kids and everybody's kids wake up with this notion of there's really no other place to go than Georgia to not only join a startup or join a large corporation that is willing to invest short-term and long-term. Because that's really what this is about, Raphael. This is a long-term vision. And too often politics has really tried to wake up and make this about election cycles. And if anybody's spent much time around me, I'm not very good at trying to create notions or momentum around election cycles. I want the lasting legacy to be about Geoff Duncan, about it's not what he did, it's how he went about doing it, that I think creates this long-term strategy. And that's truly kind of woven in the fiber of this task force and now PI squared. It's a group of individuals that are not about trying to create a 10-second soundbite or a short-term sugar high. It's about creating a long-term environment, an ecosystem that is, very, very comfortable about bringing great ideas to bear here, attracting great ideas, attracting talent from all over the world, and attracting investment from all over the world to create this long-term sustainable opportunity for Georgia to truly become and stay the technology capital of the East Coast.
Well, you've been very, very consistently clear on that as marching orders for all of us. I want to thank you for your leadership. I have to say I'm super excited about what the future holds for Georgia in this space. And it's a pleasure. I'm really looking forward to working with you and the entire task force, indeed all of Georgia, over the next several years as we start to embark on this path to prosperity and a new place for Georgia in terms of its place and how people think of it, and when we think about innovation.
Yeah, this is an incredible opportunity for us to do something special. I think we're going to look back as this was the complete catalyst moment. I'm a glass half full guy, right? My wife says my cup actually runs over, or at least the way I think it does. But for me, this period of time, like any entrepreneur, there's in times of disruption become times of opportunity. Certainly, investors see that, and entrepreneurs. And I think this period of time that we have operated through with the pandemic and social unrest and economic downturns has been the absolute catalyst we needed to accelerate and validate and innovate around this notion. And I think we are going to look back as this period of time and this group here that we've pulled together to truly become something special, truly become something that maybe on the front end sounded like a bumper sticker slogan. And now we're watching it become a reality. And it could be nothing greater in my mindset, whether I'm talking about an economic opportunity for the state of Georgia, whether I'm talking about an educational opportunity, or whether I'm talking about just a social opportunity for us to pull together in all corners of this state to truly become who we think we can become. And that's the technology capital of the East Coast. And just to kind of put a button hook on that, technology knows no boundaries. I mean, that was truly the genesis of this. I watched Alpharetta become what it became as I was a kid growing up because they had the vision and the willingness to invest in infrastructure. Then I watched companies come here, big companies that were willing to invest because this was a great place to call home and a great place to raise your family. And then I watched this continued momentum of investors coming here and ideas, and technology knows no boundaries. And so when we talk about 159 counties participating in this truly should be a vision for all. And it truly should be an opportunity for kids sitting in, second grade and you pick the county, and they should want to be able to become a programmer or an entrepreneur or an investor, not because of what their zip code says, but because the opportunities that they have in front of them. That's what this is all about. This is about opportunity. This is about the future.
Well, I want to thank you again. And I'm just looking forward. I hope you're super successful on this. Let me turn it back.
And thanks for joining the team. Right. I want to say this in front of everybody. You've been a huge team member, and for your willingness to play a part of this, it's been a huge deal. And thank you for working through all of this.
Well, it's been a tremendous pleasure, and the job's not done yet. So
that's right. We're just getting started.
So thank you again, Cannon. I'll turn it back to you.
Well, great. Well, guys, don't go away yet, but thank you for taking the time to outline what is an exciting vision for Georgia's role on the East Coast to be a center for innovation. And so thank you very much. And thank you for allowing the Atlanta Rotary Club to kind of host your inaugural announcement as well. There are, as you would expect, we had several questions come through from the audience. I think we are at the top of the hour, so maybe I'll just narrow it down to two, if you guys don't mind. And the first one is, As you look over the next 5 to 10 years, and really let's just say the next 5, what are the key milestones you'll look to say we are seeing success here? And if you want to envision a headline 5 years from now that would be the home run headline, what would that headline be?
Yeah, so I think the actionable items are going to be stuff that we watch continued flow in, right? I think we'll continue to see industries come here. We'll continue to see logos either want to grow or relocate here. We'll continue to watch investment come in. But I also think a big part of our metric, and this is going to be how many best and brightest can we keep here, right? Whether it be a kid graduating from high school that's just got actionable skill sets to be able to stay inside the technology space, to whether it become a programmer. How many kids out of the technical school programs are going to be able to walk right into a high-paying quality job? How many folks are going to be able to come out of a 4-year program and be able to walk into a job or have a startup there in front of them? How many folks in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s and 60s are going to be able to migrate across career platforms and be able to dovetail maybe what they did for an entire their entire career and be able to pick up because of the economy has shifted and changed focus. Those are the actionable lists that we'll be able, or data points that we'll be able to watch. The headline in 5 years, it's kind of an on-the-spot question. Everybody's an entrepreneur in Georgia, right? And all the other states are tired of seeing it because everybody's going to have a chance to be a part of either a startup, be a part of a company that's willing to invest and grow here, be able to be dovetailed into a 21st century global economy. Every kid graduating from high school, technical school, or a 4-year degree are going to be able to be a part of this wave. And I'm certainly, proud to know that this is kind of that catalyst moment.
Well, it is that moment. We had several other questions to get into some of the pilot programs and things, but maybe we'll just end on one, just as you look to, empower kind of the next generation of leaders and workforce, in the various industries and technology. What advice do you give to those new emerging leaders related to this partnership?
I think it's to continue to be true to yourself. Look, entrepreneurial spirit is something that you're born with. I knew from a very early age I was going to be an entrepreneur. When my baseball career ended, I guess that was a little bit of an entrepreneurial effort. I just had to wear a uniform every day. But I literally 2 weeks after my career ended, I realized I wasn't going to be worth $100 million. I was going to have to go fight for my dinner every night. My wife and I went out and started our first business 2 weeks later. I knew it. It was woven into my fiber. And I think as my kind of advice is be true to who you are, work hard. You always have to work harder, twice as hard as you thought you were going. You're going to have to raise twice as much money as you thought you were, and it's going to take twice as long. But be comfortable with that and be true to who you are. Know that Georgia is an incredibly great place to execute on your dreams. It's an incredibly great place to be able to grow your business and to be able to grow whatever your dream and what your vision is of your company. To partner with a higher eds, to be able to partner with a state government that understands that it's important that government gets out of your way as much as humanly possible. To be able to partner with a business community and chambers and groups like this that understand what the importance of coming to work every day and putting in an honest day's effort. That's what this is about. It's going to be hard to become the technology capital of the East Coast, more than a slogan, but it's worth the journey, and I think we're headed in the right direction.
Well, great. Well, thank you both. Why don't we'll wrap there? Lieutenant Governor, I know you have an important 1:00 appointment. It sounds like
my wife is actually texting me. Where are you?
Right, you got to lift something into a dorm room. But anyway, thank you for setting the time aside, and Raphael, thank you as well. You both have outlined an exciting vision to for the future for Atlanta, for the state. I loved how you did talk about it from an integrated, inclusive standpoint across geography, across age, across race, across educational background. It's ambitious, but it's exciting, and we're going to enjoy leaning in over the next 5 or 10 years and making all this happen. So thank you both for a great, wonderful dialogue.
Thank you for the opportunity, and looking forward to the future.
It's been a total pleasure to do this.
Well, great. Well, thank you.